Hello there, dear listener. Tonight we begin our drift through ancient Sumer, where warm dawn light seeps between the colonnades of Yor's grand ziggurat, brushing stone and reed alike with pale gold. You feel the cool smoothness of carved limestone under your fingertips and inhale the soft scent of early morning dew mixed with clay and date palm sap. The distant call of a waterbird floats up from the Euphrates, as if guiding you toward a hidden courtyard where our story waits in quiet expectancy. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you settle in, feel free to share your location and local time in the comments, so we can dream together across time zones. Now, let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the base of the ziggurat's broad stairway, its tiers ascending like the steps of a celestial ladder. A thin veil of mist clings to the courtyard floor, curling around pillars and between baskets of barley. Your footsteps sound soft on the packed earth, and each echo feels like a gentle nudge deeper into the past. You sense in Heduanna before you see her, her presence is woven into the temple's hush. Some believe she was the first known author, gifting humankind with words that would echo for millennia, and tonight, you'll walk alongside her as she greets the new day. A pair of temple acolytes glide past you, carrying clay lamps whose flames flicker like captive stars. Their linen robes whisper against the stone, and a breeze rustles date palms overhead. You breathe in the warm, earthy aroma of burning sesame oil, sweet and grounding, and for a moment, you close your eyes to let the quiet wrap around you like a soft blanket. When you open them, Heduanna stands before the temple doors, a reed stylus tucked behind her ear, her gaze lifted to the rosy horizon. She offers you a gentle smile, almost a secret shared between friends. In that smile, you feel invited to step closer. She carries a small basket woven from reeds, brimful of freshly harvested barley grains, still lightly dusted with chaff. With deliberate calm, she moves toward a low altar carved from white limestone. The softened light of dawn pools around her, illuminating bronze inlays that trace lunar crescents and solar disks. You notice how the pale stone gleams against the sky's blush. Heduanna dips her fingertips into the barley, then lifts them, letting a handful of grains cascade in slow motion onto the altar's surface. Each kernel glints like a tiny sun, and as they fall, you hear the softest clatter, like distant raindrops on a reed mat. The barley mound grows, and she murmurs a brief blessing in Sumerian, her voice as gentle as a lullaby. May Nana grant us clarity, she intones, invoking the moon god's name with tender devotion. You feel a faint warmth in your chest, as if the deity himself has accepted the offering. Nearby, a slender column of smoke spirals heavenward from a bed of incense. Its fragrance is heady, a mixture of cedarwood and myrrh, layers of woody sweetness that swirl around you. It blends with the morning air, creating an atmosphere both reverent and intimate, as though the temple itself were breathing alongside you. You inhale deeply, savoring each note, feeling your shoulders unclench as the scent seeps into your bones. Heduanna steps back, folds her hands at her waist, and turns to you with a soft exhale. Come, she invites without words, gesturing toward a narrow passage to the ziggurat's interior. As you follow, your fingertips brush carved reliefs, scenes of moonlit gardens, star-speckled skies, and Venus rising above temple roofs. You trace the patterns with your mind, imagining the original artists pressed against the walls, reeds in hand, working by the glow of oil lamps. The corridor opens into a courtyard where other priests and priestesses gather. Their linen garments rustle gently as they align in two neat rows. You find a spot beside Heduanna, feeling the reassuring warmth of her presence. The rising sun filters through woven mats overhead, painting the courtyard in latticed patterns of light and shadow. Each beam feels alive, dancing slowly across faces and stone. Together, you all stand in companionable silence as the first rays of sunlight touch the ziggurat's summit. In that moment, the world seems suspended, the bustle of yore paused, the Euphrates hushed, and even the wind still. Heduanna raises her arms in a smooth gesture that echoes the temple's curves, as if framing the sun itself. Then, in a voice soft enough to make your eyelids heavy, she begins the morning chant. Bright daughter of dawn, Inanna, arise. Gentle flame of heaven, touch our hearts. Her words flow in steady cadence, each syllable a droplet of honey sliding into your mind. The courtyard resonates with her hymn, though its volume remains a comforting whisper. You close your eyes and let her voice carry you upward, among the birds, above the palm fronds, toward the threshold where earth meets sky. As the final note fades, there is a breathless pause, a collective exhale shared by the gathered temple keepers. You feel the sun's warmth deepen, settling like a soft shawl over your shoulders. In this serene dawn, guided by Enheduanna's gentle rites, you sense the boundary between past and present melting away. And as you stand there, cradled by ancient stone and hymn, you drift, ever so slightly, on the threshold of waking dreams. You step forward as the temple courtyard's golden light grows brighter, the warmth brushing against your cheeks like a soft whisper of summer. Enheduanna leads you through an arched doorway carved with concentric moons, stepping onto smooth limestone slabs warmed by the morning sun. Your sandals make a muted click with each step, and you notice the faint impression of countless feet, pilgrim, priest, and poet, etched into the stone over centuries. Inside, a gentle hush settles. Priests in simple white kilts stand in small clusters, their hands folded, voices hushed in quiet chant. You recognize the low melody, a traditional invocation to Nanna, the moon god, whose silver crown shines in your memory from last night's vigil. This ritual greeting to the dawn links the moon's watchful gaze with the sun's fiery ascent, a daily acknowledgement of two celestial siblings sharing the sky. Enheduanna pauses beside a low altar of black basalt. Its smooth surface gleams where polished by offerings past, and you see a shallow basin carved into its center. She's brought a small clay pot filled with a fragrant resin, a mixture of cedar and frankincense, that smells like autumn woods after gentle rain. While you watch, she gently lifts a bronze censer from a woven basket at her side. The censer's delicate handle is shaped like a crescent moon, and you feel a small thrill at its craftsmanship, imagining the artisan's steady hands hammering and engraving the metal. With deliberate grace, Enheduanna drops a few resin lumps into the censer's bowl. Immediately, wisps of smoke begin to curl upward, pale gray tendrils twisting like lazy snakes through the shaft of light from a high window. Each breath you take deepens the gentle haze, and you feel the cool sweetness of cedar mingle with a soft, resinous warmth that settles in your chest. The smoke coils around your shoulders, easing tension from your muscles as though the air itself were weaving you a quiet robe of calm. Beside the censer, Enheduanna opens the clay pot and scoops a handful of pale barley grains. She lifts the grains between her fingertips and lets them trickle back into the pot, an elegant show of abundance and gratitude. Then, holding the pot close, she tosses the remaining kernels onto the altar. The barley falls in a soft shower, each grain catching light like a tiny star. You hear the hushed tinkle of barley against basalt, a sound so gentle it tickles your ears. A nearby priest, his voice like distant thunder on a smooth pond, intones the first invocation. You listen as the group's chant swells, a low, undulating refrain in Sumerian, calling upon Nanna's wisdom and protection. Enheduanna closes her eyes and hums beneath the chant, her melody weaving through the deeper voices like a secret breeze rustling palm fronds. You follow her lead, inhaling the cool morning air weighted with sweet smoke. She beckons you to join her at the altar. You approach and, with her guidance, dip your fingers into the barley pot and scatter a small handful over the basalt. You feel connected to countless others who've made this same gesture, linking you to a lineage of worship that stretches back to the dawn of writing itself. Your grains settle alongside Enheduanna's offering, and you sense a subtle shift in energy, an unspoken merging of your breath, the ancient smoke, and the basalt's silent strength. The priest's chant crescendos, echoing against the high ceiling, and you feel it resonate in your chest like a heartbeat. The cadence slows, and each final syllable hovers in the air before dissolving into silence. In that hush, you notice the gentle clink of bronze bells strapped to the priest's waists, their soft jingle like distant stars colliding in slow motion. The bell's tone lingers, a fleeting echo that fills the space with shimmering calm. Enheduanna steps forward, her silhouette bathed in slanted morning light. She lifts a bronze ladle filled with water from a shallow basin at the altar's foot. The water is cool to the touch as she pours it around the barley, a symbolic purification. You watch as droplets scatter, catching the light like tiny diamonds before pooling at the basin's rim. She murmurs a brief blessing, words you can almost catch, speaking of renewal and balance, and you feel the weight of centuries in that single moment of ritual. As the ceremony concludes, Enheduanna turns to you with a soft smile. Such beginnings set the tone for the day, she muses in a gentle voice that feels like a caress. Every grain and every breath holds meaning. You nod, savoring the warmth of shared purpose, and you notice how the incense smoke now drifts lazily upward, pooling in pockets of light as if reluctant to leave the sanctified air. Outside the altar chamber, the courtyard has brightened further, sunlight chasing away every hint of dawn's cool mist. A soft breeze flows through the open door, carrying the mingled scents of clay, barley, and cedarwood into the corridors. You stay close to Enheduanna as she leads you toward a wall adorned with painted reliefs, scenes of crescent moons cradling newborn lambs, star fields swirling around temple roofs, and Venus rising like a lantern in the sky. Each image vibrates with a quiet energy that seems to hum beneath your skin. She pauses before a depiction of Inanna's descent into the underworld, a story you'll explore in another gentle hour of our journey. For now, her fingers trace the carved lines that outline Venus's path. "We watched her star," she whispers. "She taught us patience, mapping her journey with hymns and observation." The words float between you in a silver thread, and you imagine the countless nights she spent on these temple roofs, quill in hand, charting the goddess's slow arc across the sky. A playful breeze toys with your hair, and you laugh softly at the memory of a scribe once joking that Venus must have paused mid-heaven to hear Enheduanna's songs. She smiles at that, a gentle curve of her lips, and you sense the light humor that brightens her world beneath the weight of ritual and devotion. Enheduanna then guides you back toward the temple entrance. The courtyard's shadows have receded completely, and the day's warmth feels more assured, promising fruitful hours ahead. Before you step outside, she places a cool hand on the basalt altar, eyes closed, as if sealing the ceremony's blessing in her heart. You follow suit, letting your fingers rest lightly on the smooth stone. And you feel a gentle pulse of energy, a reminder that this temple is as alive as you are. Together, you step back into the courtyard's open embrace. The barley's residual scent lingers at your fingertips, and the ember glow of incense smoke curls softly in the air behind you. A distant chatter floats from the city beyond the temple walls, merchants opening shop, artisans sweeping their courtyards, children's laughter drifting like playful birdsong. But here, in the sanctified hush of morning ritual, time slows again. The priests begin their tasks, tending lamps, rolling cloths, arranging flower garlands, but you and Enheduanna linger a moment longer, savoring the balance she has woven between smoke, grain, and song. With a final shared breath, she offers you her hand, an invitation to continue deeper into your sacred heart. You accept, feeling the gentle pressure of her fingers guiding you onward. And as you cross the threshold, the courtyard's warmth fades behind you, carrying with it the hush of barley grains and cedar smoke into the wider world. You follow Enheduanna into the inner sanctum of the temple complex, a shaded corridor echoing with soft footfalls and the distant rhythm of a reed flute. The walls around you are covered with painted murals, swirling constellations, crescent moons tethered to sacred bulls, and golden suns rising like watchful eyes. You take in the artistry slowly, your fingers brushing the textured clay. The pigments are muted now, worn by generations of gazes and incense smoke, but still vibrant enough to whisper stories as old as the city itself. The corridor opens into a narrow staircase, worn smooth in the middle by sandaled feet. You climb behind her, one hand on the wall for balance. The smell changes subtly as you ascend, less incense now. More clay and dust, with the faint sweetness of pressed flowers long since dried. Up here, the air thins and grows still. You step into a quiet room lit by high windows that frame nothing but blue sky. This is the scriptorium, where the magic happens, clay tablets line the walls, stacked on shelves made of river reeds woven tight. The tablets vary in size, some hand-sized, others broad enough to rest on a lap. You run your fingers along one, feeling the shallow indentations of cuneiform script. Each wedge-shaped mark was pressed with a stylus by a careful hand, dried in the sun, and preserved like a whisper from the past. They're heavier than they look, Earth-made thought. Enheduanna moves to a low bench near the window. She selects a fresh tablet from a wicker tray and places it on a linen cloth. Beside her sits a stylus carved from date palm wood, smoothed by years of use. She offers you one and gestures to sit beside her. The bench is warm from sunlight and slightly uneven, like everything in this place, not perfectly shaped, but full of purpose. "This is where we translate the stars," she murmurs with a half-smile. You look to the window and realize it faces east, toward where Venus will rise tonight. A wax-coated chart hangs on the far wall, marked with star positions and lunar cycles. You see tiny symbols for each planet, and a larger one repeated throughout, an 8-pointed star, Inanna's symbol. Enheduanna dips her stylus in a pot of damp clay. With practiced ease, she begins to press lines into the fresh tablet. You watch as the script forms, rows of delicate impressions, each a sound a word, each word a poem. She hums under her breath as she writes, her rhythm smooth and sure, as though her hand is guided by something older than memory. You try to follow suit, but your first marks are crooked and tentative. She chuckles softly, not mockery, but encouragement, and adjusts your grip with gentle fingers. The tablet begins to take shape beneath your hand. You copy lines from her example, the hymn to Inanna, radiant queen of the morning. Your stylus taps the clay like rain on rooftops, and soon the rhythm becomes soothing. Tap. Press. Lift. Breathe. You find yourself slipping into the same quiet focus that Enheduanna carries like a second skin. The room fills with a tranquil hush broken only by the occasional murmur as she recites aloud. She shines with morning fire, she walks among the stars, the heavens bend before her. You can almost see Inanna emerging from the horizon, her footsteps scattering dew across a field of reeds. The lines take on a life of their own, not just words, but a kind of celestial choreography. As midday light filters through the high windows, you notice something curious. Enheduanna isn't just composing poetry, she's charting. Each hymn contains clues, time references, directional language, descriptions of Venus's brightness and position. A line might say she danced low on the southern rim, or her silver horns came late to the feast. To the untrained ear, it's a lovely metaphor. To Enheduanna, and now to you, it's a coded record of the skies. She pauses and places the stylus down, flexing her fingers. Poetry lasts longer than numbers, she says, I still on the tablet. And the gods prefer verse. Her tone is playful, but there's truth in it. While others might mark star paths in dusty ledgers, she weaves them into song, letting Venus's story echo through every chamber of this temple. Every mind who hears her voice, outside, the breeze stirs, and shadows shift as the sun climbs overhead. A novice priest arrives with a tray of dates, cheese, and flatbread wrapped in cloth. You eat slowly beside her, savoring the simple food. The dates are syrupy, the cheese sharp and crumbly. She dips her bread in a small bowl of honey and gestures for you to try. The sweetness lingers, grounding you in the moment. Afterward, she resumes her work. A new hymn flows from her stylus, one that speaks of longing. Venus has disappeared from the sky in this cycle, slipping behind the sun, and the goddess is silent for a few days. The lines mourn her absence gently, like the hush after a festival. In the west she vanished, and silence grew. The stars whispered her name but found no answer. You ask if Venus always returns. Enheduanna smiles, a knowing curve of her lips. Always. She is never gone, only hiding. Even the brightest must rest. You hold on to that thought for a moment, letting it settle in your chest like a warm stone. Even the stars take their time. She shows you a stack of older tablets, records she's kept for years. Some are cracked or flaked, but the writing endures. You run your fingers over the script, imagining the days when these were fresh and wet, when her hands were younger but just as certain. The tablets speak of seasons, eclipses, floods. They mark each reappearance of Venus with the reverence one might reserve for a beloved guest returning home. Together, you pack away the day's work, placing your clumsy tablet among hers. She ties a cloth over the stylus pot and covers the fresh clay with a linen wrap. There's a quiet pride in her movements. Not vanity, but care. These are not just poems. They're time capsules. The room darkens slightly, the sun slipping past its highest arc. From below, you hear the slow chant of the afternoon rites beginning. Enheduanna stands and stretches. Her limbs move with the practiced grace of someone who writes for hours each day but still carries herself like a priestess, spine straight, breath slow. Come, she says, let's stretch our legs before the evening star comes back to us. You nod and follow her down the stairs again, your fingers still tingling with the rhythm of clay and verse. The temple's quiet persists, wrapping around you like a cloak. Outside, birds wheel in the hot sky, their calls distant and dreamy, and as you walk beside the woman who mapped the heavens in hymns, you begin to understand each poem is a star. Each star, a note in her celestial song. And you're just starting to learn the melody. The afternoon heat in your gathers slowly, like honey thickening in a jar. You and Enheduanna walk through a shaded arcade that connects the temple's inner sanctum to its gardens. The stone beneath your feet is warm but not unpleasant, and the hush that surrounds the temple seems to deepen under the heavy air. Outside these walls, the city bustles. But here, in the arms of sun-dappled stillness, everything slows to a dreamlike drift. Enheduanna stops at a low stone basin where water trickles from the mouth of a carved lion. She cups her hands and takes a sip, then offers you the same. The water is cool and carries a faint tang of river minerals. You wipe your hands on your robe, feeling refreshed. As she leads you deeper into the temple's private gardens, the garden is modest, no grand hanging terraces or mythical beasts carved into hedges, but it's alive with texture. Rows of fragrant herbs grow in orderly beds, mint, coriander, and the tangy-sweet smell of thyme. Fig trees sway gently above, their wide leaves catching sunlight like green sails. A pair of tortoises ambles near a date palm, unhurried and ancient. Somewhere, hidden among the foliage, a lyre plucks a sleepy, meandering tune, strummed by an unseen musician. Enheduanna sits beneath a low canopy and waves for you to join her on the reed mats. The air smells of warm stone and fresh leaves. A passing breeze stirs the long linen of her robe. And she tilts her face to the sky. Venus rises again tonight, she murmurs. She returns first as the evening star, before taking her morning throne in a few weeks. You glance upward, though the sky is still too bright to reveal anything but pale blue. Still, you like the thought that a star is quietly preparing behind the curtain of daylight. She reaches for a wooden box nearby and opens it, revealing a few simple tools, another stylus, a shallow tray of water for softening clay, and a worn string of beads used for counting celestial events. She rolls them gently between her fingers, the soft clack-clack-clack joining the hush around you like a percussive whisper. Each bead, she explains, marks a phase. Disappearance. First rise. Zenith. Dimming. Descent. You run your fingers across the beads, noting their smoothness. Some are round, some oblong, one cracked down the middle and repaired with a band of wax. She smiles. Even beads get second chances. The garden around you swells with slow activity. Bees drift lazily from flower to flower. Temple cats stretch themselves along sun-warmed flagstones, and a pair of young priestesses hum softly as they gather herbs into woven baskets. One of them gives you a shy wave, her fingers stained green from crushed mint. You wave back, Imagining her singing one of Enheduanna's verses later tonight while tending a bowl of lentils, Enheduanna leans back, eyes half-lidded. "The stars are polite," she says dreamily. "They don't rush. They arrive. They leave. They rest." You nod, and though it's still daylight, your eyes grow heavy just thinking of stars moving in such elegant, unhurried silence as slow hour passes. You might doze, or you might simply blink slower than usual. The reed mat is comfortable, and the shade of the fig tree dapples your eyelids with flickering shadows. Somewhere behind your half-closed eyes, you begin to picture Venus not just as a light in the sky, but as a figure clothed in shimmering white, stepping delicately across a staircase of wind. Enheduanna speaks again, her voice low and slow. "When I first watched Venus disappear, I cried. I thought she'd left us forever. I didn't know stars had cycles, that they needed rest like we do." She picks a fig from a nearby branch and breaks it open. The scent is syrupy and rich. She offers you a piece. It tastes like warm sugar and the edge of summer. She pulls a clay tablet from her pouch, smaller than those used for hymn composition, more like a notepad. Upon it is a series of tiny markings and numbers, some of which look familiar from your earlier scribal session. She explains that it tracks Venus's timing, when it rises, how long it stays visible, how brightly it glows. The priests in Akkad use charts. She adds, "But here we prefer poetry. It's less fussy." You grin. She chuckles and adds, "Well, mostly." The garden hums. A dragonfly zips past your ear. The breeze picks up, bringing with it the smell of wet earth and temple spices. From a nearby doorway, a servant appears with cool water in a ceramic jug, and Enheduanna thanks her with a gentle touch to the shoulder. You sip slowly, feeling it travel down your throat and nestle in your belly. The sun lowers a little more. The air thickens slightly, as if preparing to give itself over to twilight. Enheduanna's gaze shifts upward, scanning the sky. "Soon," she whispers. "She'll be there, just above that roofline." She isn't just waiting for a star. She's waiting for a friend to return. You look toward the same patch of sky. There's nothing yet, just a pale wash of blue slowly deepening to violet. But now you know the signs, the way the birds grow quieter, the way the shadows stretch themselves across the flagstones like cats preparing to nap. Venus is coming. She always does. Enheduanna rises slowly and brushes the fig leaves from her robe. "We'll climb to the rooftop soon," she says, offering you a hand. That's where I greet her best. You take her hand, warm and sure, and stand beside her in the fading light. The stars are still sleeping, but not for long. As you follow her back through the garden, you pause to touch the bead string one more time. There's something comforting about the way the beads feel, worn, counted, remembered. Like footsteps in the sky, back in the corridor, the incense from earlier still lingers faintly. The heat has begun to ease. The temple exhales slowly, and you with it. You look forward to the roof, the open air, the quiet sky, and the return of a star you've never met but somehow already miss, and so you walk, step by quiet step, toward a meeting at the edge of twilight. The climb to the temple rooftop is a soft, spiraling ascent. The stairwell curves gently upward, with walls the color of baked sand and niches every few steps holding small oil lamps. You trail your fingers along the cool stone as Enheduanna leads the way. Her pace is deliberate, almost ceremonial, as if each step brings her closer to something sacred, and not merely something high. When you reach the top, the world expands, your stretches out before you in soft silhouettes. The city is less of a maze and more of a tapestry from up here, a mud brick rooftops, winding alleyways, temple courtyards, and distant silhouettes of canals reflecting the lavender sky. Somewhere far off, a boatman calls out, his voice curling over the water like smoke. Closer, a chorus of evening birds begin their quiet clatter before settling in for the night. You feel the breeze first on your arms, cooler now, kissed by desert twilight. And then you hear it, a kind of hush that's different from silence. Not the absence of sound, but the fullness of something beginning. The stars aren't visible yet, but the sky is preparing, as if someone is backstage adjusting the lighting ever so slowly. Enheduanna steps toward a low wall and leans against it. Her eyes are fixed upward, steady and patient. You stand beside her, mimicking her posture. And for a moment, neither of you says a thing, then a dot, just a dot. A pinprick of brilliance right where she said it would be, hovering just above the outline of a distant ziggurat. Venus, she doesn't say her name. She doesn't have to, you both simply watch as she grows stronger, pulsing softly against the deepening blue. It's not a dramatic arrival. Venus doesn't need drama. She simply appears, confident, luminous, and just a little smug about being the first to show up to the cosmic party. Enheduanna exhales, and it sounds like relief wrapped in reverence. She always returns, she says quietly. Even after disappearing for days. Or weeks. She always comes back. She steps away from the ledge and unfurls a narrow scroll, a rare luxury made from imported papyrus. You can just make out the markings, clusters of small symbols, some star-shaped, others more abstract. A record, you realize. A kind of astronomical diary. Not raw data, but a blend of verses and numbers. Observations made poetic. That's her way. I charted her when I was 17, Enheduanna says, smiling faintly. Didn't trust the priest scribes in Akkad. They said Venus had a fixed cycle, but I wanted to see for myself. She lowers the scroll and looks at you sideways. It's never the same. She dances. Wobbles. Flickers. You have to watch her with your own eyes. That's how you learn the sky. You sit cross-legged on a mat of woven reeds, the rooftop warm beneath you, and glance upward. Now, other stars are joining the show, faint and still unsure of themselves. But Venus reigns, high and bright, the unquestioned empress of twilight. Enheduanna begins to hum. The melody is old, maybe older than she is, passed down from priestess to priestess like a whispered constellation. You don't recognize the words when she starts singing them, but the tone is unmistakably one of praise. Not worship, not exactly, but something softer. Intimate. Like a lullaby for the sky, this verse is for her rising, she explains between stanzas. Later, I'll write the one for her setting. And next month, one for when she vanishes. Disappearance is as sacred as presence. You let the thought settle. How rarely, in your own modern way of thinking, do you celebrate the absence of something? But here, on this rooftop, absence is not loss. It's a phase. A pause. A part of a cosmic breath. The city below is dimming. Oil lamps flicker in windows, and somewhere down the block, you hear a family laughing over a late supper. A donkey brays in protest, perhaps annoyed at being tethered too long. You smile. Even ancient cities have their mundane sounds. Enheduanna continues her hymn. You notice that she doesn't sing like someone performing for others. She sings for herself, for Venus, and maybe for the wind. Her voice blends with the nighttime air, rising gently like incense smoke into the vast quiet, a pause in the song. She opens a small box and removes a fragment of baked clay. It's covered in tiny wedge-shaped markings, cuneiform, but delicate, like someone had whispered onto the surface instead of pressing with a stylus. She holds it to the light of a nearby lantern and smiles. My first poem to her, she murmurs. I wrote it after watching her for 7 nights straight. My tutor thought I'd gone moon-mad. You laugh softly. Were you? Maybe. But if madness teaches you to listen better to the stars, is it really madness? You lie back on the mat, feeling the woven reeds press into your shoulders. The sky above is full now, stars blinking to life like shy children at a school play. Venus, though, Venus is the headliner. Unblinking. Undeniable, Enheduanna reclines beside you. You can tell the time of year by where she appears, she says. The farmers use her to plan harvests. The sailors time their trips by her mood. And then, softer, I map the gods through her. She lifts a hand and gestures slowly, tracing a path from Venus toward the east. That's where she disappears. Not tonight, though. Tonight, she stays a little while longer. Long enough for a song. Or two. The rooftop is cool now, but you don't mind. Your robe is warm, the mat is forgiving, and the sky is a story unfolding quietly above you. A story older than temples. Older than names, she begins humming again. You close your eyes. And for a moment, just a moment, you imagine what it would feel like to be Venus. Suspended. Watched. Adored in silence. Returning always, just when people start to wonder if you're truly gone, Enheduanna speaks, her voice barely more than breath. She always returns. Even if you forget to look. And you think, yes. That sounds right. The cool air drifts over the rooftop like a soft shawl, and the scent of burned cedar from a distant brazier lingers faintly on the breeze. You're not sure how long you've been lying there, but the stars have multiplied. The sky has ripened into something vast and velvet, dusted with celestial grains that Enheduanna probably knows by name. She shifts beside you, sitting up with a contented groan and brushing her robe smooth. Now comes the part one dread, she mutters, half to herself. Returning indoors. You grin. There's something oddly modern in her reluctance to leave a good stargazing spot. Together, you descend the stairs, one slow turn after another, until you re-enter the temple's inner sanctum. But instead of returning to her chambers, Enheduanna veers left. Into the scriptorium. It's not what you expect, no solemn, silent scholars hunched over scrolls. No shelves lined with dusty tablets. It's far more alive than that. There's a low, golden glow from dozens of oil lamps. Floor cushions are scattered across the room in haphazard comfort. Wax tablets lie half-filled with scratches and sketches. A bowl of pomegranate sits forgotten in a corner, next to what appears to be a child's stylus shaped like a fish. This is where my mind wanders, Enheduanna says with a mock flourish, sweeping her arm. And sometimes remembers its way back. You ease into a cushion, the reed mat beneath it sighing softly. The space smells like warm beeswax and crushed inkberries. Enheduanna moves to the low central table, selecting a fresh clay tablet and a stylus. You watch her roll the stylus between her fingers, not unlike a chef considering the best angle for slicing bread. Then she begins. She doesn't write like she's recording facts. She writes like she's coaxing something out of the clay, as if the words already exist inside the tablet and she's just revealing them one wedge mark at a time. You look over her shoulder. It's poetry, but not rhymed or rigid. Fluid. Dreamlike. A voice speaking directly to Venus, not the planet, exactly, but the goddess she represents. Inanna. Fierce, radiant Inanna, who lives in both the heavens and the bloody tension of human life, Enheduanna hums as she writes. She is the brightness of evening, she whispers. She is the flame of longing, the sharp edge of battle, the silence of return. You blink slowly. There's something dizzying about it, watching her words take shape while the night outside cradles the temple like a sleepy animal. I used to think hymns had to be composed with dignity, she says, wiping her hands clean on a strip of linen. But now I think they need to ache. If you don't feel something pulling at your ribs while writing, it's not a hymn. You nod as if you understand. Part of you does, though maybe not in words. She stands and walks toward a small alcove, a nook carved into the wall, lined with other tablets. Not scrolls or records, but personal pieces. She brings back a few and places them gently between you. These are my older attempts, she says, eyes twinkling. Before I learn to bleed correctly. You scan one of the tablets, running your fingers over the raised symbols. It's clumsy, yes, but charmingly so. Like a first draft of someone discovering not just a goddess, but herself. Do you remember the first thing you ever wrote about her? You ask. Enheduanna chuckles, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. Of course I do. I thought Inanna wore golden shoes and slept in a basket of clouds. That was it. That was the entire hymn. You laugh softly, imagining it. Not bad. Not good, either. But sincere. I found sincerity survives the longest. There's a lull in the conversation. The kind that settles like a warm blanket, not an awkward silence but a mutual resting of thoughts. Enheduanna leans back, stretching. We record the stars so we can name our longing, she says sleepily. But we write him so the longing feels less lonely. Outside, a night bird calls, low and echoing, as if it too is practicing its own hymn to the dark. She smiles at the sound. Even they sing to her. You nod, watching as she carefully wraps the fresh tablet in a linen square, tying it shut with a dyed cord. She sets it beside the others in the alcove. I'll bake it tomorrow. Let the fire seal it in. You look at the shelf, rows of hardened poems resting like sleepers. You wonder how many future eyes will trace those same lines. How many will whisper them under stars she can no longer see? I wonder, you murmur aloud, what she thinks of all this. Enheduanna lifts her eyebrows. Inanna? You nod, she considers it. I think she laughs. And maybe weeps, now and then. But mostly, I think she's flattered. You both chuckle. She stands, brushing clay dust from her hands, and moves toward a wall carved with a simple depiction of Inanna, wide-eyed, arms lifted, stars ringing her head. Not flashy. Just precise. Enheduanna presses her palm gently to the stone and closes her eyes. This is the closest I come to speaking with her. Not prayers. Just listening beside her. You stay silent. It feels right to do so. The oil lamps flicker, casting long, sleepy shadows. The scriptorium quiets. As if even the clay itself is dozing. Would you like to sleep here tonight? She asks, gesturing to a pile of cushions. You nod. Something about the room feels sacred, but not in the bow your head sense. Sacred like a favorite blanket. Sacred like lullabies. As you settle into the cushions, Enheduanna murmurs, don't worry. Venus will wake you in the morning. You smile with your eyes closed, and somewhere in your dreams, the stars begin their nightly dance, anchored by one goddess, watched by one poetess, and sung into clay one patient line at a time. Morning doesn't so much arrive as it gently drapes itself across the temple like a pale linen sheet. You stir to the sound of soft sweeping, bristles on stone, and the faint aroma of something baking. Perhaps barley flatbread with date syrup. You breathe in slowly, keeping your eyes closed for a few extra heartbeats. Eventually, you sit up. The cushions beneath you are still warm. Enheduanna is nowhere in sight, but her presence lingers in the air like sandalwood. The scriptorium is quiet now, tablets stacked, styluses neatly arranged, every lamp extinguished but one, which flickers lazily near the doorway. You find her not in her chambers, nor on the roof, but in the courtyard just beyond the temple's inner gate. She's standing barefoot on the dew-damp stones, holding a clay cup, watching a pair of young acolytes attempt to herd a stubborn goat toward the far gardens. They'll name it after me if it escapes again, she says without turning around. I'm not sure whether to be flattered. You sit beside her on a sun-warmed bench. The stone is still holding on to the last remnants of nighttime coolness. Nearby, water trickles from a low fountain, and bees hover lazily around a cluster of blooming blue lotuses. Is this your daily ritual? You ask, sipping the cup of barley tea she passes you. One of them, she replies. The others involve fewer goats and more incense. She points toward a shaded alcove near the courtyard wall. There, scribes are slowly unrolling scrolls and laying out tablets for inspection. That's the review table. It's where the temple's texts are checked, copied, or rejected outright if they don't meet standards. You raise an eyebrow. There's a literary committee? She chuckles. We prefer its council of clay. Sounds more dignified. As the goat finally surrenders to its handlers, Enheduanna leads you toward the inner sanctum. Today, she says, is about preparation. Not just for rituals, but for alignment of thought, of space, of self. You enter a small ritual room, modestly lit and lined with tool storage jars. The floor has been freshly swept, and on a low altar sits a cloth-wrapped package. Enheduanna unwraps it carefully, her tablet from the night before, now hardened, still warm from the kill, still smells of fire, she notes, holding it to her nose. That's how you know it'll last. She hands you the tablet for a moment. It's heavier than you expect, solid, full of quiet power. The symbols etched into it are still legible, but now shine slightly where the heat has glossed the clay. She tucks it into a wooden box marked with a simple star. One of many in a shelf of nearly identical boxes. Each of these holds a hymn. She says, and together they form a cycle. Not just poetic, but astronomical. Venus reappears every 8 years in roughly the same place. My hymns do the same. It's a loop. A spiral. You stare at the shelf. A poetic star chart. A sun calendar, but it's not just astronomy, she adds. It's ritual life. Festivals, offerings, community timing. Venus disappears, and the temple pauses. Venus returns, and we feast. The hymns remind us not just of stars, but of rhythms. Grief and renewal. Longing and return. She offers you a small bowl of perfumed water to wash your hands and leads you back out into the sunlit temple. Come, she says. We prepare the altar next. The temple's central hall is wide and pillared, with high windows that let in beams of angled light. Dust motes float like drifting spirits. Enheduanna moves with a practiced grace as she arranges offerings, pressed oils in small dishes, crushed pomegranate, braided strands of wheat. You help her place flowers, some fresh, some dried, around the altar's base. The ritual isn't solemn so much as focused. It feels meditative, like folding warm laundry while a soft rain falls outside. As she adjusts a hanging bronze ornament shaped like a crescent, she hums. A simple melody, rising and falling like breath. You find yourself swaying to it, your body aligning with her rhythm. This, she says quietly, is also writing. Just without clay. You nod. Your hands still smell faintly of the rose oil she dabbed on your wrists earlier. The scent blends with the sun-warmed stone and the dust of old incense. It's the scent of meaning, of repetition and intention. Once the preparations are complete, Enheduanna steps back and studies the altar with an artist's eye. It's not for the gods, she says, not really. They're eternal. This is for us. For remembering that even in stillness, we orbit something. You sit on one of the nearby benches as she settles into a cross-legged seat before the altar. She lights a thin coil of incense, and the smoke rises in gentle spirals, curling toward the rafters. The sun shifts, shadows stretch and retreat. She begins to recite, not loudly, but steadily, rhythmically, like paddling a boat over a quiet lake. You close your eyes, letting the cadence carry you. Her words flow not just in praise, but in pattern. This is poetry designed for memory, for echo, for return. At some point, the temple sounds melt into the background, birds in the high windows, the faint clink of clay in the scriptorium, the occasional distant shout from the goat herders. Likely engaged in a fresh round of philosophical debate with their livestock, but none of it matters. Because here, in the quiet of the altar room, time has folded. You are no longer a visitor. You are part of the temple's rhythm. A note in its song. A pause in its poem. Enheduanna finishes her recitation with a long exhale. She doesn't open her eyes right away. Instead, she rests her hands on her knees, palms up, like she's offering the silence itself, and for a moment, you believe Inanna listens. Later that afternoon, the temple cools beneath long streaks of shade. You wander with Enheduanna through its quieter corridors, past niches filled with lamp-blackened statues, past courtyards half overgrown with time and silphium, past walls scrawled with graffiti, some reverent, some less so. You'd be amazed how many people leave love poems behind temple pillars, she muses, trailing her fingers across the sandstone. Or threats. Someone once wrote, "Curse be upon the scribe who stole my sandals." I had it preserved. The air is still and warm. A nearby fountain bubbles lazily, and the sky is the color of old linen. You pause beneath an archway draped with hanging beads, each one carved from polished river shell. They click softly in the breeze. This is the archive court, she tells you. A sacred space, half storage, half ceremony. It's where old hymns go when they've been sung too often, too brightly, retired, not discarded. They're kept in sealed jars, labeled with years, seasons, and signs of Venus' last rising. Some scholars think I just wrote love songs, she says. But I was mapping. She gestures toward the shelves lining the wall, some of them stacked with scrolls, some with tightly packed bundles of fired clay tablets. You lean closer. Faint traces of symbols, lines like mounting crests, stars like pointed flowers, dot their surfaces. You can imagine her etching them one by one. Sitting cross-legged, murmuring the verses aloud as she worked. It's not about stars in the sky, she says. It's about cycles. When Venus disappears, we light more lamps. When she returns, we sing louder. The city's whole calendar bends around her absence and return. You ask her why. Why Venus? Why not the sun or moon? Because she vanishes, Enheduanna says, softly. And always comes back. She lets that sit in the silence for a moment. Then, and because she's beautiful, but difficult to pin down. Like poetry. Or memory. The archive court smells of parchment, clay, and time. You spot a group of younger acolytes brushing dust from one corner, preparing for a ceremony. Enheduanna nods at them in approval but doesn't stop to supervise. Instead, she leads you into the cool dimness of an adjacent chapel. The ceiling here is painted with stars, nocturnal constellations, their edges faded but still present. An altar stands in the middle, simple and unadorned, flanked by two slender oil lamps. You sit on the ground, legs folded, as Enheduanna takes her place behind the altar. I used to teach here, she says. Not just poetry. Astronomy. Sacred geometry. Ritual math. You'd be surprised how many scribes couldn't calculate a decent arc before breakfast. You grin, imagining the temple as a kind of school, echoing with equations and the rustle of rush paper. She removes a small tablet from her satchel, new, still damp, and presses her stylus to it with gentle insistence. I want to show you how we write the stars, she says. Not literally, of course. That'd take too much clay. She begins etching softly, murmuring as she works. Rising star. House of dawn. She rests behind the black mountain. Each phrase links to the next, the language folding in on itself like waves curling at the edges of a shore. The symbols she uses aren't just phonetic, they're layered. Some are ideograms that suggest both sound and image. Others are almost mnemonic glyphs, memory keys. When you read this, she explains, you're not just reading. You're reenacting. Your mouth, your breath, becomes the night sky. The candlelight flickers across the tablet's surface, throwing tiny shadows into the grooves she's carved. I don't believe the gods care what ink we use, she says quietly. But I think they listen when we mean it. When we write with our whole selves. The chapel door creaks open. One of the acolytes pokes their head in and whispers something about supper preparations. Enheduanna nods but doesn't move right away. Instead, she looks up at the painted ceiling and hums a single note. Long, low, steady. The room holds it like a secret. Then she hands you the tablet. Finish the last line, she says. You've earned it. You hesitate, stylus in hand. The clay is cool and malleable, and your fingers feel clumsy. But you carve anyway. Something simple. Something true. A mark that means returning light or maybe just being here. She doesn't correct you. Just smiles, then rewraps the tablet and tucks it into her sash. Outside, the air has cooled further. Shadows stretch long and narrow across the plaza. A breeze stirs the palm fronds above you, and somewhere, bells jingle faintly, perhaps a child playing. Or a goat with a renewed sense of purpose. The temple's kitchen smells of roasted lentils and spiced figures. A low table has been set in the courtyard, with woven mats all around it. Clay cups, glazed plates, a basket of warm bread. Someone's already laughing. Stay for supper, she says. The stars will still be there when we're done. So you sit, legs tucked, surrounded by dusk and candlelight, as plates are passed, stories shared, and Enheduanna, poet, priestess, teacher, leans in close and asks, have you ever tried fermented plum paste? It's terrible. You must taste it. And somehow, despite the vast chasm of time and culture, you feel perfectly at home. Night has crept in quietly, laying itself over you like a silken shawl. The stars are sharp and insistent now, and the air has cooled enough to carry a whisper. After supper, you and Enheduanna stroll to the upper level of the ziggurat, its ancient brick still warm from the day's sun. The climb is slow and winding, a lazy spiral past clay reliefs and half-buried amulets left by pilgrims. She pauses occasionally to touch one, out of habit or reverence. You can't quite tell. When you reach the summit platform, the city unfolds below like a forgotten tapestry. Canals glint like broken mirrors, rooftops glow in pools of torchlight. The desert beyond lies dark and infinite. This is my favorite time to write, she says softly. When everything is asleep except the sky. You look up. Venus hangs low in the west, bright, calm, distant. She doesn't always rise where you expect her, Enheduanna murmurs. She shifts. She tests you. And then she shows you. From her satchel she pulls out a longer tablet, cracked but intact, her own hand-carved star chart. Not a technical one like a modern astronomer might draw, but poetic, metaphor-laced, full of rhythm and intuition. Symbols curve along a spiral that mimics Venus' 5-point celestial dance. Each point is marked with a hymn. You trace one. It reads something like her silver sandals press the black mud and joy wakes in the reeds. This one came to me during a sandstorm, she says. The dust covered everything, but the moment it cleared, she was there. Just hovering. Like nothing had happened. As she speaks, her voice takes on that soft cadence again, that half-lullaby tone. She describes how, in times of drought, she would lead whole processions of temple singers to sing for the stars' return. Not because they believed Venus would fix the weather, but because songs gave shape to waiting. The two of you sit side by side on the platform's edge. The stone is cool beneath you. Somewhere below, a dog barks once and is answered by silence. The scent of ash and wild mint drifts past. You ask her if people ever doubted her, this priestess who read planets like poetry, all the time. She chuckles. They called me a dreamer. A heretic. Said women shouldn't speak to stars unless it's through laundry smoke. You both laugh. Then she grows quiet, her gaze fixed on the distant light of Venus. But I kept writing, she says. Because I believed that memory and rhythm were tools. Like plows or shovels. If you use them enough, you can till the sky. She stretches her arms wide, framing the horizon. Venus sets over there tonight. But in 584 days, she'll rise again, over that temple roof. And in 584 more, she'll be here. Always cycling. Always singing. You look where she points, and for a moment, the stars themselves seem to fall into a rhythm like ink drops on a tablet. Patterns form. The sky doesn't feel so chaotic after all. Then Enheduanna stands, brushing dust from her tunic, and says, "Come, we've a ritual to finish." You return to the temple by torchlight. The corridors feel different at night. Quieter, yes, but also deeper. Every corner holds a story. Every flickering flame casts a memory. In the central chamber, the sacred fire still burns. A few sleepy-eyed acolytes move in practice silence, laying bowls of water, scattering petals, lighting cedarwood incense. One young scribe is half dozing against a pillar, stylus still in hand. She doesn't wake him. Instead, Enheduanna steps into the center, palms up, and begins to chant, not loudly, not with ceremony, but with the sleepy hum of someone singing themselves through memory. You recognize the pattern. It's one of the hymns you saw etched earlier. A soft invocation to Inanna as Venus, blending imagery of morning dew, river tides, and celestial grace. And though you don't know the words, something in the melody tugs at you. Like a lullaby you half remember from a dream, you sit cross-legged against a cool wall, watching the firelight dance across her face. The incense thickens the air until it feels like you're breathing perfume. When the chant ends, no one claps. No one speaks. The silence afterward is part of the ritual. It stretches and softens, like velvet unraveling. Then, finally, she turns to you and says, "Would you like to try?" You blink. Surely not, you're no priest, no poet, but she presses a warm tablet into your hands. It's blank. You've seen the stars, she whispers. You've heard the song. Just write the part that only you can remember. You stare at the soft clay. Then you press the stylus gently to the surface. It's easier than you thought. You carve a crescent. Then a dot. Then a line that could be a horizon. Behind you, the fire crackles. Enheduanna watches with a kind of proud amusement. There, she says. Now the stars have a new name. She takes your hand and adds, almost teasingly, and you're now technically an astronomer. Terribly underpaid, though. The temple grows still again. Somewhere, a lull drum thumps softly, a heartbeat, maybe, or just a reminder that time moves forward. Enheduanna yawns and stretches. I've said enough, she murmurs. Let the stars speak now. And then she leaves you there. In that warm, fragrant stillness, as the fire flickers lower and your eyes begin to close. You wake slowly, not with a jolt, but with that delicious, half-conscious drift that blurs dreams and dawn. The temple has cooled further, and a faint glow peeks through the high windows, just a blush of gold, enough to remind you that the stars have done their night's work. Enheduanna is already up. Of course she is. She's outside, on the eastern steps, face turned toward the faintest suggestion of the rising sun. Her robe is gathered loosely at the waist with a twist of palm fiber cord, and in her arms she holds a small bundle, a reed basket wrapped in blue linen. You sit beside her. She doesn't greet you with words, only a nod and a sigh that somehow says everything. This is for Inanna. She finally murmurs, opening the linen to reveal its contents: figs, soft cheese, a few plump dates, and a scattering of crushed barley. It's not a grand offering, but it's from the first harvest. That makes it worthy. You help her place the food in a shallow clay dish, which she sets on a carved ledge facing east. The breeze plays gently through the palm trees below, and a sleepy gull cries out once before settling into silence again. Did you dream? She asks without looking at you. You pause. You think you might have, but the memory is fading, like mist over the river. I think so, you say. Maybe of the sky. She smiles faintly. That's where the best ones live. Breakfast is a quiet affair. Not just in the temple, but across the city. This early, yours is hushed, as if all its citizens are exhaling together before the clamor of day begins. A junior priest, barely taller than the grain jars he carries, brings you each a cup of honeyed goat milk. You sip it slowly, letting the warmth coat your throat. Somewhere, a stringed instrument begins to pluck out a scale, practice for a morning hymn. Enheduanna leans close and says, "You know, the stars aren't just lights. They're letters." You glance at her. Letters? She nods. They form a language we only half understand. When Venus disappears from the sky, she's not gone. She's writing. Somewhere beneath the world, she's composing her next appearance. She gestures upward with her milk cup. And when she rises again, we read it if we know how to look. It sounds absurd and lovely all at once, but who are the stars writing to? You ask. To us, she replies, as if it were obvious. Or maybe to each other. Either way, someone should take notes. She stands and dusts off her robes. Come. I want to show you where the real work happens. You follow her down a narrow corridor behind the temple's main sanctum. The path slopes slightly downward, into cooler, darker air. You pass through a heavy cedarwood door, etched with protective symbols, and enter a space unlike any other you've seen here. The archive. It's not just a room. It's a world. Hundreds, no, thousands, of tablets line the walls. Some are shelved neatly in baked clay cubbies, others lie in open baskets, stacked like thick dusty pancakes. Scribes move silently, each with a stylus and a pot of fresh clay. The air smells of damp earth and old incense. A steady drip of water echoes from somewhere nearby. This is where we store memory, Enheduanna says. Not just hymns. Not just laws. We keep everything. Dreams, poems, contracts, letters, even jokes. She pulls a small tablet from a shelf and hands it to you. It reads, "A goat walks into a bar. The bar breaks. Goat wins." You blink. Then you laugh. A soft, sleepy laugh that feels earned. We scribes get bored too, she shrugs. Then she shows you a more serious tablet, one of her own. This one maps Venus' cycle, she says. Every 584 days, she completes a full pattern. Morning star, then evening star, then back again. You trace the wedge-shaped cuneiform with your fingers. The repetition is soothing. Like counting sheep, if sheep were celestial orbs and shepherds were priestesses with complicated hairstyles, there's a phrase carved near the edge that she points out. From absence, she forms her return. She taught me that, Enheduanna says, nodding to the sky. Disappearance isn't always loss. Sometimes, it's preparation. You linger in the archive a while. It's the kind of place you could get wonderfully lost in. The coolness, the quiet scratching of styluses, the faint echo of past lives locked in mud. As you leave, you pass a wall of cracked tablets, ones too worn to read. She pauses here. We keep these too, she says. Even when their words fade. Because someone once cared enough to write them. It's a small, profound truth. Back in the temple courtyard, a few townsfolk have gathered, bringing modest offerings, a sprig of mint, a carved wooden comb, a handful of apricots. None of them look wealthy. They look like people hoping their prayers will be heard by someone who understands loss, beauty, and uncertainty, someone like Enheduanna. She moves among them gently, whispering words too soft to catch, touching their shoulders, blessing their gifts. She doesn't promise them answers. She offers them presents. Later, she returns to your side and says, "You can tell a civilization by what it records. And by what it lets go." You don't know what to say to that. So instead, you look up. Venus is gone from the sky now, her cycle in its hidden phase. But somehow, you feel her more than ever. Enheduanna follows your gaze. She's dreaming, she says. We'll wait. And you both do, together. By now, the sun has claimed its place in the sky, not yet harsh, but high enough to send sharp lines of light across the temple floor. The shadows of the carved columns stretch out like sleepy cats, lounging in the dust. You and Enheduanna walk slowly through the northern wing of the temple, where the air smells faintly of warm limestone and lavender oil. A scribe passes you, arms full of scrolls wrapped in reed fiber, and nods respectfully. You return the nod, feeling half like a priest and half like a child in a museum with no glass barriers. "I want you to meet someone," Enheduanna says. He's very old, very wrinkled, and almost never wrong. You're led to a small chamber tucked behind a curtained arch. Inside is an elderly man with a head like a shriveled fig, bent over a low table scattered with star charts and broken shards of painted pottery. This, Enheduanna announces, is Ishkunanna, astrologer emeritus, and personal thorn in my side. He doesn't look up, she says that lovingly, he mutters, squinting at a sliver of clay tablet. "I'm her favorite elder." She has 3 favorite elders, you whisper helpfully. Ishkunanna finally peers up, his eyebrows making a valiant effort to reach his hairline. "Ah, a wit. Good." Keeps the boredom out. He slides the shard toward you. "Tell me what you see." You squint. There's a delicate carving, a crescent moon, a 6-point star, and a strange looping figure you can't quite identify. "Venus," Enheduanna says. "When she appeared on the western horizon, after sunset." This image is from 15 cycles ago. Over 24 years, Ishkunanna adds, without needing to count. We log each appearance, track each shift. And still, she surprises us. He gestures to a massive parchment hanging on the wall, a detailed map of star movements and planetary progressions. It looks like someone tried to translate dreams into geometry. "Sometimes I wonder if the gods are just trying to entertain themselves," he mumbles. "The way they loop Venus around like a ribbon through time, beautiful nonsense." Enheduanna walks to the chart and taps a particular curve. "This one," she says softly. "This curve was the year of my exile." The room goes still. Ishkunanna lowers his head in respect. You feel something cold settle in your chest. You've heard whispers about this. A political rift, a rival priesthood, the city's shifting loyalties. And Enheduanna, daughter of the great King Sargon himself, cast out of her sacred role. Forced to leave you for months. Perhaps years. No prayers, no temple, no stars to guide her. She turns to you and says, "That's when I wrote the lament." Your brows rise. You know the lament. Everyone does. It's copied onto dozens of temple walls across the land. It begins with, "I, the high priestess, have been cast from the sacred chambers." But hearing her speak of it so plainly, that it was born not from myth, but from raw experience, it's different. It breathes now. "Did you ever lose your faith?" You ask quietly. Enheduanna looks at the star map again. "Never," she says. "But I did question why the stars would write such a cruel verse." She walks slowly over to the window, watching the city below. "When I returned, I saw Venus again on the horizon. As bright as ever. She hadn't left me. I had just needed to circle back." There's a pause. A long, warm silence, then Ishkunanna clears his throat. "She wrote a new hymn that week. Said it came to her in a dream while she slept on stone." Enheduanna smiles. "Pain makes excellent ink." You spend the afternoon with them, reading old records and watching the light shift through the lattice stonework. The patterns on the floor slowly rotate with the sun, like a celestial sundial marking not just hours, but moods. The sounds of the city grow louder, merchants calling, animals braying, children chasing dust devils in the alleys, but inside the temple, the calm holds. Eventually, Enheduanna rises and says, "Let's walk." You leave the temple together and make your way down the long, polished steps into the city. The air is thick with life, roasted onions, fresh fish, wet clay, and the occasional whiff of animal dung. But even the stink has character here. She guides you through narrow side streets, past walls covered in painted glyphs and decorative mosaics. The city breathes in long, slow cycles. There's no rush. Only rhythm. At last, she stops beside a small, dusty courtyard. Children are playing a circle game, slapping their hands and chanting about the moon getting lost and the stars finding her again. Do they know that's about Venus? You ask. Enheduanna smiles. No. But their bones remember. You sit together on a low stone wall. The sun dips lower now, casting everything in burnt orange. The sounds of evening prayer begin, a low melodic hum rising from rooftops across your. I sometimes wonder, she says, what my hymns will become. Songs? Footnotes? Dust? You consider that. Maybe all three. She laughs gently. Not a bad legacy. There's a moment when a breeze moves through the courtyard, lifting the edge of her robe and carrying the scent of crushed myrrh. It feels like something has been said. Even though no words were spoken, Enheduanna looks up at the fading sky. She'll be back soon, she says. Venus. Just a few more days. And somehow, that's comforting. The sun has slipped beneath the horizon now, and the first stars prick the velvet sky like tiny lamps strung across the vast darkness. You stand beside Enheduanna on a rooftop terrace overlooking the city unfolding beneath you like a living mosaic, mud brick walls glowing faintly in the twilight, palm trees swaying gently, and the Euphrates reflecting the last light like a ribbon of liquid glass. The evening air carries the faint hum of distant voices, the clinking of pottery, and the occasional bark of a watchdog. Somewhere nearby, a lute's soft, irregular plucking weaves through the cool breeze, adding a delicate soundtrack to the settling night. Enheduanna lifts her chin, eyes tracing the slow rise of the bright star Venus, emerging just above the eastern horizon. There she is, she whispers, like a promise carved in light. You breathe in deeply, the scent of dust, dried figs, and cedar smoke filling your lungs. The moment feels suspended, like the city itself is holding its breath, waiting. She tells you about the rituals that mark Venus's return, about the offerings carried to her temple before dawn, and the prayers whispered by torchlight to welcome the morning star's reappearance. You imagine those ancient priests moving through shadowed halls, their robes brushing stone, their voices rising in chant, sounds that ripple through time, barely audible but endlessly enduring. The stars, Enheduanna says softly, are more than guides. They are stories written across the heavens, stories we live inside, even if we forget the words. You ask her what she dreams of when she watches Venus. She smiles, a slow, knowing smile, and says, I dream of cycles, beginnings and ends entwined like vines. Of absence and return. Of a world that spins even when we sleep. The wind picks up, carrying with it the faint aroma of incense and the crisp coolness of approaching night. You close your eyes and feel the steady pulse of the city, the gentle rhythm of river and star, of memory and myth. Above you, Venus shines steadily, a beacon in the dark, and as you settle back, the stars wheel slowly overhead, the sky's great story unfolding, one luminous word at a time. Night deepens, and the world around you grows quieter, softer. The bustle of the city fades into a gentle hum, like a distant lullaby. You find yourself walking with Enheduanna through the narrow lanes lined with mud brick houses, their walls glowing faintly in the moonlight. The scent of baked bread mingles with the cool earthiness of the evening, and somewhere nearby, a lantern flickers, casting dancing shadows. As you wander, Enheduanna shares tales of her childhood in of the early mornings when the city was still wrapped in a blue-gray hush, and the calls of the bakers blended with the cooing of doves. She speaks of the bustling marketplaces where spices from distant lands filled the air with scents you can almost taste. The texture of silk slipping through fingers, and the soft murmur of traders haggling over dates and cloth. She tells you how she learned to read the stars before she could read the written word, tracing their patterns with delicate fingers, feeling the stories embedded in their movements. The sky was my first teacher, she says. And the hymns I composed were its echo. You pause by a small canal, the water reflecting the silver moonlight in gentle ripples. The sound of frogs croaking blends with the distant murmur of prayers from a nearby shrine. Enheduanna picks a sprig of jasmine from a vine climbing the wall, the sweet fragrance curling around you like a soft blanket, even now. She whispers, "I hear the music of the cosmos in the rustle of leaves, the splash of water, the sigh of the wind. It's all connected, earth, sky, and soul." You feel a profound calm settle over you, the kind that comes from being fully present in a moment that is both ancient and timeless. The world feels vast and intimate all at once, like a story told in whispers, meant only for you. As you continue your walk, the stars wheel overhead, their slow dance a reminder of the cycles that shape all life, cycles of light and dark, arrival and departure, memory and hope, and in this quiet night, you find yourself drifting gently, carried by the soft currents of history and myth, toward a peaceful, restful sleep. The night deepens further, and a velvety stillness settles over the city. You follow Enheduanna to a quiet garden tucked behind high mud brick walls, a secret haven where date palms sway gently and fragrant lotus blossoms float on a small reflecting pool. The air is thick with the scent of myrrh and sweet basil, and the faint chirping of crickets hums like a gentle melody. She gestures toward a low stone bench beside the water's edge, inviting you to sit. The cool stone soothes your skin as you settle in, and the distant stars twinkle above like scattered jewels against the dark canvas of the sky. Enheduanna begins to speak of the hymns she composed, describing them not just as poetry but as living prayers, woven from the threads of cosmic events and human emotion. Each hymn, she explains, is a bridge between our world and the divine, a way to listen and to be heard. She hums a few notes softly, melodies that seem to echo the rising and falling rhythms of the Nile, the pulse of the seasons, the steady arc of Venus across the heavens. The sound is hypnotic, a gentle current pulling you deeper into a state of calm. Nearby, a lantern flickers, casting a warm, golden glow that dances on the water's surface. The lotus petals seem to shimmer in response, their delicate beauty amplified by the quiet magic of the night. You feel the weight of time soften, the centuries folding like a well-worn scroll. In this tranquil moment, Enheduanna's world feels close enough to touch, the soft rustle of palm fronds, the distant murmur of the river, the cool night air brushing against your skin. She speaks of hope, of how, despite exile and hardship, the stars continue their eternal journey, and so does the human spirit. "We are all part of a great cosmic dance," she says, "and even in darkness, the light returns." The garden seems to hold its breath with you, a sacred space where history and myth mingle beneath the watchful gaze of the stars. As you sit together in the gentle night, the world feels vast, peaceful, and perfectly still. You wake before dawn, carried by an instinct older than memory, to the eastern steps of York's great ziggurat, where the first pale light flirts with the horizon. The city below is quiet, the canal waters still, and the faintest breeze stirs the surface of an offering pool you've helped prepare. Enheduanna stands beside you, her profile outlined against the soft glow, and in her hand she holds the final hymn of her cycle, a tablet inscribed last night, still warm from the kill. She turns to you, her voice as gentle as the morning air. "This is for the return," she says, pressing the tablet into your hands. "For every ending that unfolds into a new beginning." You feel the weight of her words, and the clay, in your palms. As if the promise of Venus's return resides not just in the sky but in the circle of your breath, together, you place the tablet on a simple altar carved into the stone ledge. Around it, you arrange pale blossoms of lotus and scattered grains of barley, each kernel symbolizing a verse, each petal tracing the arc of Venus's journey. The clink of barley against limestone, a sound you'll carry in your mind, echoes softly in a hush. Some believe that when these final hymns are recited, the walls themselves remember the goddess's path, tracing her light across centuries like an echo of devotion. The idea feels plausible here, where clay and song intertwine so seamlessly that you can almost see the ancient priest's hands guiding your own. The eastern sky deepens from pale rose to a gentle gold, and you sense, more than see, Venus stirring beyond the threshold of sunlight. You and Enheduanna step back, bowing your heads as if in deference to something both unseen and deeply familiar. The barley grains shimmer in the dawn glow, and the lotus petals seem to lean toward the light. In the quiet moment before the sun fully rises, Enheduanna leans close and whispers, "We are all part of her hymn." Every breath, every step, becomes a verse. You close your eyes and let her words settle into your bones, feeling the unity of temple and city, hymn and sky, past and present. The first ray of sun strikes the altar, illuminating the clay tablet script and casting a slender shadow that aligns perfectly with a carved crescent moon beneath it. You exhale, sensation flooding back, warmth in your chest, the tang of barley on your tongue, the smooth grain of clay under fingertips. And then you sense Venus, glowing softly above the horizon, greeting the day as she has for thousands of seasons. Enheduanna places her hand over yours on the altar, and you both pause as the city exhales around you. Voices rise from distant courtyards, the bray of a donkey echoes once more, and the scent of baking bread drifts upward. Life resumes, gentle and ordinary, yet infused now with the quiet miracle of cyclical return. You step away from the altar together, the echo of barley grains and lotus petals lingering at your feet. The hymn has ended, but its resonance remains, vibrating through stone, memory, and sky. As you descend the ziggurat steps, the city spreads out like a living tapestry, woven from routine and ritual, faith and wonder, and in that soft dawn light, you carry with you a final verse, that even as stars vanish, their light endures in every human heart willing to listen and to remember. The sun's warmth unfurls slowly across your brushing stone and reed with honeyed light that feels like a gentle awakening. You listen to the hum of morning, the soft murmur of voices, the lilt of water in the canal, the distant bleat of a goat heralding the new day. Each sound is a note in a lullaby composed by centuries of dawns, a melody both ancient and ever renewed. You find a quiet corner of the courtyard, where lotus blossoms float in a shallow basin and date palms sway in the gentle breeze. Here, the world breathes in relaxed cycles, and your own breath slows to match its rhythm. You close your eyes and let the sensations wash over you, the cool stone beneath your fingertips, the scent of barley mingled with cedar smoke, the touch of soft linen on your skin. In this tranquil pause, you feel the weight of time soften. Millennia slip away, leaving only the echo of a hymn carried on the stars. Venus herself might still be climbing the sky, or resting just beyond sight, but her presence remains in every hushed whisper of wind through palm fronds and every glimmer of light on the water's surface. You imagine Enheduanna watching over you from somewhere beyond time, a gentle song woven into the air you breathe. Her verses ripple through your mind, a tender reminder that even in absence, there is promise, even in silence, there is voice, and even in stillness, there is movement. As the courtyard hums to life, footsteps, greetings, the soft rustle of market stalls, allow yourself to drift a little deeper into calm. Let the world's gentle rhythms carry you, like a soft reed boat gliding along a silent river under a canopy of stars. Here, awake or asleep, you are cradled in an endless cycle of return.